Before showing you the video of the way Rachel Maddow, Ed Schultz, and Reverend Al Sharpton destroyed Governor Walker about the Janesville lies told by Paul Ryan during his speech at the Republican convention, I want to talk a little bit about the voting suppression laws in 22 states, and I want to raise this problem because, of course, it's a problem of discrimination, it's a problem of civil rights, but I think it is a much bigger problem here. It's the problem in which we are dealing with a federal election in which everybody in the country should have exactly the same right and the same laws to vote, and every state take initiatives to do that, which is totally anti-democratic, is really fascist, is against the principle of democracy. And I say that because I vote in New Jersey, and I think that this law impact my vote. So they are attacking me. Forget the people in their own states, but they're attacking me because I don't have the same right and the same rules for voting that other people have for the same kind of election. So wake up, people. Wake up.
Walker, it's Rachel Maddow in New York. I appreciate the chance to talk to you about this. I only raised this because you did too, but I don't mean to be a fact checker, but on that Janesville GM plant, isn't it true that that GM plant closed during the Bush administration? Is your criticism that the auto bailout wasn't big enough to come back and reopen it? That was not Barack Obama shutting down that plant.
No, it actually it had 2 rounds of layoffs and ultimately closed down just a few years ago. But it's a good example of what happens here. And the irony is, for all the people who said that the bailout was suddenly good in places like Janesville or Kenosha, it wasn't. In the end, what they ultimately ended up doing in that bailout was doing a bankruptcy that was a managed bankruptcy, which is essentially what Mitt Romney called for in the first place. We would have been a lot better off. We would have saved the taxpayers a lot more money had they done that early on, and it might have just saved plants like GM if they'd been more effective in the private sector doing that early on.
So you think that the auto bailout was not effective for Wisconsin and Ohio, for other neighboring states there?
It wasn't in Wisconsin. If you ask the guys that used to work at GM in Janesville, if you look at the guys that worked at Chrysler and Kenosha, they don't feel like it was effective because they're not working today. What we need is true prosperity, and yet it comes really more effectively for the private sector, and that's what Paul talked about tonight. He didn't just talk about the budget. He talked about freedom and prosperity. Those are the things I think independent voters, as well as the base, cares about in the state of Wisconsin.
I hear you on the on the general issues. It is surprising to hear you run down the American auto industry at a moment that it really has come back, and to see such a bright spot in the economy being talked about as if things haven't worked out in the auto industry since the bailout is a surprise, Scott.
I'm just pointing out it didn't in Wisconsin, and ultimately did in places like Michigan and elsewhere, but it could have come back more effectively and sooner had they taken the advice of Mitt Romney early on and done a managed bankruptcy instead of spending all those dollars of taxpayers' money that otherwise could have been done more effectively in the private sector early on. We wasted a lot of money. We've done that in many other areas in the federal government. It's yet one or more of the many indictments against this president and his administration, and why we need to move forward.
Was there private sector credit available to save the auto industry?
Again, a managed bankruptcy, that's something that could have been quite effective. And again, I think that's ultimately where they ended up heading after several difficult missteps along the way.
Wow. I appreciate your say.
It was not Barack Obama's economic policies that closed that GM plant. That plant was closed in December of 2008. It's in the Washington Post right now, Governor Walker. It had nothing to do with Barack Obama's economic policy whatsoever. You can't get away from that fact.
No, what I'm saying is long term, not because of that plant then, but the idea of that coming back, the idea of the auto industry coming back is something that could have been more effectively done if they'd gone more aggressively, gone down the path of Mitt Romney's suggestion early on to go down a managed bankruptcy instead of going on the path that cost the taxpayers millions of dollars more than it needed to.
So are you making the case that that plant in Janesville would have better employment today if they had followed Mitt Romney's theory of a managed bankruptcy, that you could guarantee in your economic model that that plant would still be employing and making things today?
No, I
don't think you can, and that's the key here.
The only one who made that promise was Barack Obama, who promised the people in Janesville that that plant would still be open. And the fact of the matter is, well, that's it. You're right. You're right. And he made that. If you want to talk over and not let me talk, that's fine. Apparently, that's what you do a lot of. But in the end, Barack Obama is the only one who made a promise about that. No, let me finish.
Okay.
Barack Obama. Let me finish. Barack Obama was the only one who made that promise. He's the one who made the promise. If he wants to live up to that promise, I'm not making a promise that. I'm just pointing out what he said about what would happen. It didn't happen under his presidency.
It couldn't happen under his presidency. He was inaugurated in January of 2009. It closed in December of 2008. So how could he fulfill a promise when he wasn't in office, Governor?
Because he said it wouldn't close, and if it wouldn't close, ultimately he would have come back, and it would be in play after he became the president.
Retroactively, he should have had it open?
No, I'm saying if it was effective in helping the automobile industry, it would have brought it back if that was his promise. But his promise ultimately failed, which is why people aren't employed in Janesville or Kenosha, and why we see in 44 or 50 states unemployment has gone up in the past month. It's why we see 42 consecutive months of unemployment above 8%. It's why we have 23 million, sadly, 23 of our fellow Americans who are either unemployed or underemployed right now. That is a clear indictment. Paul Ryan not only talked about that, he had an optimistic plan about how to move this country forward. We're going to hear more details about that tomorrow. And it doesn't matter how long you talk over me. Those are the facts, and the facts are the facts. And we're going to move our country forward with Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan.
Governor Walker, thank you for talking to us about this and being a good sport. And Ron, thank you for letting us step all over your interview. I appreciate it. Thank you.